way, the other way, the other way, the other way.
I was like, not him. Was that the price of winning this minigame? Well then, Johnny, lead us to the next game.
All right. Thank you so much, Zoe. It's time to head into our first match. It's Virtus.pro versus the Ultimates. Zoe?
That's right, that's right.
We watched a lot of Virtus.pro this stage. What do you think about their team?
Not a fan, honestly. It felt a little... it felt a little disconnected. Let's set the stage here first, Johnny. You're just diving straight in. Like, let's set the table, okay? Because we are here.
Start the game.
We're holding it hostage. I'm here for this, okay? I will not get to the game until I said everything I needed to say. This is not about getting the teams ready. This is just about me. This is my show, okay? So, EMEA lower bracket semifinals. This is for all the marbles. You need to talk about the stakes here because the winner is moving on and getting their ticket to the mid-season championship, and the loser is out of the playoffs and then has to find a way through the LCK to different game. And then they have to switch games and become a pro somewhere else in order to make it.
Q is qualify. That'll be a throw in the blank
you know, the kids these days, they do be crazy. Yeah, okay, but like I think the Ultimates was one of the teams that just throughout stage 2, obviously we know what they're capable of, but they couldn't quite shoehorn their look in.
Wow,
it started to work towards the end of it, and now we do see that that Skyle is in over Twilight. Twilight, that was one of the things we discussed, right? Twilight's Ana. Can they make it work? Is it too easy to counter? What do you want to see from them today, Rich?
I mean, the biggest thing, you know, we were so talking about even last week, you know, Jake made a comment about it where Kevster was such a significant factor in this. Not to say that the others didn't play a role in this, but it just always felt like it kind of lived or died by Kevster. So with the adjustment in, you know, making that shift onto the supports where, you know, almost the real struggle, we actually got to see it from going against Gen G, is that when they kind of ruffle up the support line aspect of it and things, you know, through banning or not actually having a definitive answer in how they want to play the back line to support the rest of the team, I feel like that's a struggle and that they need to really take this week to communicate that so that they can enter into this match today to be able to take down VP.
Yeah, so the big question is, will both teams stick to their guns? You touched on this already a little bit ago, Rich. But if we're looking at Virtus.pro and what we've seen from them just last week, they also suffered a top loss in the upper bracket semifinals and then looked very, very strong against Team Peps. We did see them dabble with that Symmetra in both of those games. Jaewoo picked it up already on their first match in the playoffs. That was nothing to call home about. It did work better against Team Peps, but do you see them making that change into this kind of meta for this week?
Well, we'll have to see, because the goal is, of course, to win this game. If you win this game, you qualify for the mid-season championship.
Is that really the goal here?
I don't think they need to bring out the Symmetra to beat the Ultimates. Now, if you want to have a chance against Alcadzia, to some mines, like, you might have to bring out the Symmetra. So the real question is, like, if you were just pro, do you try to play the Symmetra to try and beat Twisted Minds and Alcadzia, or do you prepare just to beat the Ultimates, right? And so you kind of have to like weigh, like, are we going to put scrim time into playing the Symmetra, or are we just going to play our style and we'll be able to beat the Ultimates? Against the Ultimates, I think they can just get away with, you know, what you've already played so far. And given that the Ultimates is changing up to Skyle, which is a massive change, by the way, because Twilight is no longer like in the starting lineup for this team, tells me we'll see some more double flex coming out of this team, of course, but it's just a huge deviation from playing Twilight all stage. So if I'm Virtus.pro right now, I'm like, the Ultimates are clearly struggling. They're making a last-minute emergency decision to bring in Skyle here and play in the support line. I'm feeling good. Like, I don't need to revolutionize the way I play the game here. So I'm really looking forward to see what the Ultimates and Virtus.pro are going to bring us in this, you know, high-stakes matchup here.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait very long because the teams are now ready, and that means we can send it over to Mitch, who's back from a very lengthy, relaxing holiday, joining our very hard-working Matt, who has been holding down the fort all these weeks.
Oh god, I know Matt's got so much to say about
this guy. This guy has been gone forever. I mean, I saw you. You were in Australia.
Yeah, before that, I was in Toronto.
You were at Bezos' wedding the other day in Venice. I mean, you've been everywhere.
I was in Toronto getting paid, and I was in Dallas getting paid, bro. Just because you weren't there doesn't mean I was on holiday. You know what I'm saying? Australia, yes, it's a holiday, but I have kids, so not really. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like this is your holiday. Once you get back in here with me, it's like your own little personal therapist here that you can talk to in front of a crowd of people.
Exactly. I retained you to try and cure my hypotension, Matt, and honestly, you've done a bang-up job. I've got to hand it to you on that one. Fantastic. This, of course, is a huge series. A first of 3 to decide which team can sneak through into wars that very important tournament just around the horizon that we've all been discussing it. Mid-season championship on the line between Virtus.pro and the Ultimates. This is your perennial 3rd versus 4th team. I think it's safe to say we're now in the top 4 of Europe. And the question is, Matt, do these changes really muddle the mixture at all? Because the Ultimates have banned this Junker Queen who's recently got a pretty significant look at her commanding shout ability.
Yes and no. So, like, Ice Dome, typically we see play here for VP. On Oasis, we see him play, like, a lot of hazards. So, I don't really think this changes anything, potentially, for VP. Sile, we have not seen. As Zoe alluded, I have been the Iron Man of EMEA Overwatch here. I've done every game, pretty much, and we have not seen him. It's really been Twilight kind of the entire time, but maybe you feel like you need that Lucio. I saw Twilight Lucio the last few weeks and didn't look awesome, but maybe it's actually for Kiri. So this is a little bit of an interesting look. Sky's going to play Ana, so still with an Ana, but you want that Kiri as the other option. They could have probably done this with Sky and Twilight.
Yeah, quite possible. Seen plenty of that Kiriko action from Twilight. But the Lucio, his passive healing being increased by 25% now, that definitely means the Ultimates need a player that can go there. Obviously, between Sky and Twilight, you don't have a great option in that regard at all. He's not going to be on the Orisa here, and I think the reason why ATU, not a real Symmetra team, is because taking Kevster off the Tracer is a pretty bad idea at any point in the game. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be Fixer already seeing Kevster drop on by, and the Ultimates can't really fight for the point. Heesung has taken too much damage and then just gets completely isolated. That's been a bit of a theme for the Ultimates over the course of this stage, Matt, is that the tank tends to be on a different wavelength.
It has, and it's definitely been an issue, right? Playing the Orisa, you're trying to get to that high ground, but Ice Gnome is just able to control that area, and Hazard is so sturdy to be able to kind of like move him out of the way, not able to do so. And once the Orisa loses the armor, it is just all over there for Heesung. So early point control here for VP. Nothing surprising. They've actually looked much better as of recently, Mitch. Obviously got off to a little bit of a maybe rough start at the beginning of the stage, but starting to put it together.
Kai here really trying to get an early opening for the Ultimates. You're on the Orisa, so those mispositioning scenarios are punished even harder than on other heroes. Fixer traded out for Kai, though. Kai takes a pretty aggressive position in that window early and is punished by Shockwave. Ice Dome here, pretty happy actually just to rotate cooldowns to get away from the Javelin. Spin and asleep, catches onto the Hazard as Kevster tries to get onto that high ground, but the Ultimates haven't done much more than just play for parity so far. A pick on the Sojin would be big, but Kevster doesn't have the verticality to chase Shockwave down.
No, and Jaywu can keep the point contested. It'll be Gullah from the high ground, actually dropping the Kitsune Rush. It's a nice sleep on the Ice Gnome yet again. Terror Surge coming on in with the nano-boosted Heesung. He is spinning his spear, Mitch, but all his teammates are dead. That is another fight that goes in favor of VP.
It's really hard to see how you're supposed to make this Orisa work. I mean, Ice Gnome is going to clown on you in terms of that mobility, especially being able to control that high ground so much more effectively. If Heesung wants to play for the Causeway, he's got to take a very obvious route towards the right there at top of your screen and up the stairs. That's where he got punished in the first fight. Virtus.pro here now have Downpour, Pulse Bomb, Down Barrier, crucially to commit here. Fixer looking very comfortable on this revamped Lucio.
Yeah, good luck to the Ultimates here. This one's going to be tough. I mean, there's going to be Kitsune Rush here, opens things up. Maybe you can actually just kind of like downpour on through this, but VP does not feel threatened at the time. Oh, that is a 6 sleep. That actually interrupts the Pulse Bomb as well. So a few things here go in the Ultimate's favor. That is a massive play by Sky.
Just as you saw the Pulse Bomb wind up happening, just as the Tracer was reaching into her pocket, the Sleep Dart comes in. You're looking at from Sky, obviously odd to see the Ultimates with Sky as the designated Ana player. But that's the kind of permutation they need to go for right now, apparently. I mean, definitely
like you talked about though, like it gives them an option to play like Lucio Kiri, like at some point if they need to.
And I think that's obviously why. I definitely got the impression from Christopher that they were at the Hail Mary phase of their run. The Ultimates knew they just needed one more series, 3 maps away from making a qualification, but a sound barrier is going to stand in their way in this round. Sky's already taken out of the fight. Fixer is on the hunt. He's found Kevster, forcing him into that lower area, zoning him off the fight. And our eyes start turning to the rest of the backline for the Ultimate. Sile did not have the mobility to get out of the fight, and Heesung obviously isn't going anywhere. VP springboard off a very effective first fight. Nice stall. They should be comfortably taking this round.
I mean, it is a pretty massive change, right? You're bringing in, with qualifying to our, mid-season tournament on the line, right? You're bringing in a player that we haven't seen at all, really, right? Throughout the entire stage, and it's like, okay, here, go out and get us a win. Obviously, you assume that Sile has a decent amount of scrim time in his back pocket, so we'll see. If it kind of is something that's made, is it a one map thing? Is it a whole series thing? I think we'll have to kind of wait and see how it plays out.
I think, look, as the series goes on, and if we don't really see Sile, on that Lucio a fair bit, you can start to guess that there's maybe a little bit more to the issues on the Ultimates than just, a hero pool situation. If we keep seeing the Ana Kiriko look here from the Ultimates, might start to wonder exactly what the problem is for them right now.
But even with Twilight's faults, you're still in this position, right? Like, it's not. I mean, it's not like it's been so. Oh my God, we have to kind of do something, right? I think it has to be for hero pool potentially.
Again, in their lead up to this game, it was that comfortable win against Paps. Oh, Genji, rather than put them in this situation. There's Kai, though. He's good for at least one of those around. A great early pick here now that puts Ultimates at a player advantage, and Kevster with full control of his high ground. The rest of VP now pretty haphazardly have to try and extract themselves from the situation. Shockwave at least gets his. Sky gets picked up. Kai under some pressure now. Good damage that's going on to
quite low. Yeah, I think you're going to be able to flip this here for VP as Ice-Dome gets to the high ground. Suzu there keeps him up as you see he's just kind of using that power block here. Going to go down towards the low ground. Should be able to get this flip here. I mean, you won that first fight for the Ultimates, but both supports were so low. They just get into getting caught out.
I think it's worth pointing out as well, just a reminder that it's not Lucio's amp it up heal that's been increased. It's just that general heal. In the past, obviously, you spent a lot of time in speed mode, but being able to stave off a lot of that sort of burst damage at the start of the fights gets easier now with higher throughput from Lucio, which is not something that we're used to dealing with. Normally, some of those Lucio Brig comps, for example, were pretty low healing in general and couldn't really get you there. Kai fails to take control of the high ground, though. That's the headline of this particular fight. With Ice-Dome out of the picture, though, there's staying power rests with Ultimates on this low ground. It's a matter of keeping Heesung alive, but with Ana's throughput, Sky is able to keep their Orisa in the game and keep control of the point. To contest it here now into this Kensune rush from Virtus.pro. It's Jaewo into the back line, though, instantly dispatches Sky, but Shockwave is lost elsewhere. Both races going to work. It's Jaewo's pulse bomb, though. Beautifully done. He accounts for the entire backline on his own, and now there's nobody to keep this Orisa in the game.
I mean, that is sick, because also Heesung getting very close. He's going to use the Terror Surge here, but most likely would have been comboed like we saw in the last round with Sky's Nano. Jaewu gets the kill on the Sky really early on. You never get the use of the Nano there. So the Ultimates do get up to that 50% mark, but man, Jaewu making a huge play, preventing them from getting closer towards a round win.
We're at least going to be looking at parity here in a couple of moments. Nano here for Sky, of course, Boulder Shot so critical over the course of this stage, basically single-handedly keeping Winston out of the meta. Sky just sitting back, though. Opportunity, of course, to send Heesung on a collision course with the rest of Virtus.pro, but they need to try and angle and find a way. Jaewoo's already looking to pressure that backline, and they've got to be aware of the Ultimates that they are on a timer. They need to get value out of this Ana Ultimate, and they send it straight away. Heesung into the backline, but doesn't have a good target. Shockwave's able to get up to the high ground. Heesung charges up a Javelin, but it was a friggin' ridiculous Suzu there on Ice-Dome, able to save off that damage. He was bioed as well.
Insane Suzu. Yeah, that's a crazy Suzu there by Gala. That ends up saving Ice-Dome, but it still might not be enough.
Sky was taken down, but apparently Sile is enough to get the Ultimates in a fighting position, but the points flipped up against them. They can't really contest it. This is now dangerous. Virtus.pro up to 75%. The Ultimates have to leverage their DPS Ultimates, the most speculative of the bunch, to try and get them back into this round. Here's Kitsune Rush, though, from Virtus.pro. Gala has the fix, potentially. Tries to get away from those dangerous close quarters with the Pulse Bomb in play. It's Kevster and Kai do convert all their Ultimates. Give the Ultimates a good lead in this fight.
it's huge, right? Ice Gnome not able to survive through the pulse bomb. Bola shot kind of gets pushed into that U-shape area there. And, you know, even though they use that Kitsune Rush, they try and use a Suzu to help Ice Gnome. He's still not able to live, where you don't get a kill on a Hazard there, and Hazard's in that close range area. I mean, good luck. I think that is probably a GG for VP, but the Ultimates with an opportunity here, right? Kitsune Rush plus Terror Surge.
JayWu's spending a lot of time in the backline. I've got to force out of Kevster's recall as well. So for that window, definitely gave him the advantage. Icenom, of course, uniquely can transition between low and high quite easily. Not all tanks can sort of do that on this map. Means he has access to that mega health pack on that cooldown. Kai gonna went his way around the flank here. Gala gonna be spotted out. This is the Ultimates control the point now, and Icenom wants to try and regain that high ground for Shockwave to play from. Kai's gonna be forced back. Too many numbers for the Ultimates, and he lingers a little bit too long. Shockwave able to bring him down with a rail. And there it is, Pulse committed onto Hisung. Even though he went gold, it was enough damage to take Orisa off the point and out of the fight. It's Kevster going down to Shockwave, who's found two very important kills on DPS in this fight. And Virtus.pro should be able to take the map here and now.
Yeah, the sound barrier here, I think, is just the exclamation point to end it there for VP. A quick map one. Sky was hitting some 6 sleeps, even hits one there towards the end. It's just, you can't keep the Hazard and JayWu on Tracer out of your backline. I mean, constantly putting pressure on those two.
Yeah, you can see Kevster trying to fight JayWu in some of those last moments, man. I mean, JayWu forces a blink, sticks around in the backline, and in the meantime, it's Icenom heading up to the high ground, catching Kai out, setting up the Shockwave now for easy sightlines to be able to find Kevster, and all of a sudden, it's over. I mean, this composition that involves the Hazard, obviously it's quasi-dive, it involves a fair bit of coordination, but that's something that Virtus.pro have made their bread and butter throughout the course of this stage, and the Ultimate's already showing some of the fractures, I think, that we've seen exposed at some stage or another over the course of this stage, and having to integrate Sile now in the most important game of their stage is tough.
And this is also why, if you are VP, you get a player like Ice Gnome, right? You can play him in moments like this to play Hazard. We've been seeing him go to Vestola a lot. I'm curious if like kind of the meta maybe changes that up for the rest of the series, right? But this is a map that Ice Gnome has played whenever we see VP in these types of situations and plays the Hazard and can do it at a high level.
And I feel like VP are in pretty good stead here, especially seeing a Queen ban drawn out of the Ultimates very early. Now, I don't know how much time these teams have really had to scrim on this new patch, but I think one of VP's strongest game plans is when he can put JayWu on the Genji or like Fixer on the Brig, something like that. Now, Junker Queen may actually enable that kind of style, especially the Genji, right? Queen Genji is just a match made in heaven. Obviously, commanding shout being improved is amazing for Genji players in general. So the Ultimates might already have tried to target that strategy on that control map.
And we've seen a lot more Sojourn as of lately than like a Freya, right? Where Sojourn kind of plays into the Queen Genji type of compositions as well. So the Ultimates, they get their map pick in here pretty quick, Mitch. They're going to take us to Dorado here. So we'll see. This also, Dorado, if you don't want to ban like well, you can't ban Queen if you're them, right? You don't exactly play Queen on Dorado. No. Like you would play something like a Diva or a Winston to kind of access some of that high ground. Maybe you could probably maybe even like a Orisa we see some teams do. I know around some of these chokes, but definitely not necessarily a Queen map per se.
No, I mean, and this is definitely going to sort of dictate the ban strategy here for Virtus.pro. You have a decent idea of what you're running up against. Dorado is the kind of map where the Ultimates have tried to make their own. Being the team that, I've sort of criticized other teams for not having an identity. I think the Ultimates have definitely had one. It's just like having options to sort of bridge the gap from their ideal dive-based comp to the more realistic compositions they normally get forced into by ban strategy. Here's your mode win percentage now heading, of course, into this Escort map, and it is definitely a weaker one for Virtus.pro in general, only 44% win rate.
No subs. So we're seeing Sile and Ice Gnome both stay in. I think this makes sense for VP, right? You probably expect you're going to see some more of the dive-centric tanks who are playing towards that high ground. Vestola can play the Diva, obviously, but maybe they feel like Hazard right now is actually a little bit more viable on more maps, right, than just kind of how we've seen them play it on Oasis.
Quite possible. I do think that the Hazard here on Dorado definitely gives you a lot of options, and we've seen plenty of Diva on this map over the course of the stage. Normally it's Mag just doing that to really upset me. And it obviously hasn't always looked like the most robust approach. So I do think
I heard on your cruise, you basically just downloaded tons of, Mag POVs to watch by the pool.
No, I actually just searched Mag's name up on Reddit and downvoted every post that said positive things about
That's
him.
just, I don't know why you guys hating.
I don't. No, I don't. I
don't know why
can I be honest? I'm more frustrated with Krusty than I am with Mag. Because I would like to see Mag put
get it all out.
Yeah.
Get it all out.
Yeah.
All right.
I have been away. Like I haven't got to vent. Like you have to give me this. I mean, Gen G, of course, I feel for them because they're not even involved in this match. Of course, they are out of the money.
you're just beating.
Listen, I've got to get my 2 cents in. The Plat Chat guy's been donor-walling me. I've been like, yo, you got to get me on the show. I need some clout, guys. Hey, got any of that clout?
There's no shot you're asking to get on the show.
That's crazy.
That's your first lie of the day. The Ultimates, they get rid of Diva here, kick things off, right? So that would say maybe we see some more Winston-based stuff, but a smart ban by VP on the other side, right? Where they get rid of Ana, where if you don't have the Ana in the mix, playing like a Winston feels a little bit worse, right? Now you're kind of maybe in that Hazard wheelhouse.
And obviously, Heesung has shown us this Hazard. He's actually shown us, a multitude of these more mobile tanks, even the Wrecking Ball, a lot of these Busan outings. So it's not necessarily uncomfortable to see you move over towards the Hazard. I feel like that's going to give us a pretty compelling mirror. VP, I mean, if we get the Fixer Brig, I feel like that's one of the most quintessential hero and player matchups at support that you have available to you this season. Maybe Simple on anything. That guy's absolutely cracked. But here for Virtus.pro, feel like they're in decent shape with this lineup. It's Shockwave going over towards the Cassidy, and you feel that, it feels like he's been power crept a little bit by some of those longer range hit scan based DPS, but here obviously the sight lines for attackers are a little harder to establish.
I kind of like it though, because from what you were talking about in Oasis, and I think it's true, is sometimes the coordination between Heesung in the back line and can be a little bit off at times, right? Where he's in a spot where you can't exactly provide him healing. If he has to be a player who now goes in deep, right, and dealing with the Brig, the Cassidy, the Immortality field of the Baptiste, it makes it even harder, right?
Shockwave is spotted. Cassidy now realizing there's a slight wrinkle in the play because dealing with the hindrance of Cassidy is a bit frustrating for Tracer to deal with at the best of times.
What do you think of Kiri Bat as the backline? We've seen a lot of with the BAP Brig throughout a lot of EMEA, which has looked really good.
I mean, again, Immortality field is pretty crucial. If you want to set up your Cassidy, I think that the Brig BAP is one of the best backlines to make sure that Cass has more longevity in these fights and also can stave off those flankers a little bit more comfortably. And look, I think it can be harder to sort of consistently heal Hazard, but he's less floaty than a lot of those other sort of tanks. So Gala with good positioning here should be able to keep Isom well and truly within the fight. And of course, Air Matrix is pretty critical. Some of the perks as well that BAP has access to inside that Air Matrix are pretty big, as I just say, as Virtus.pro get rolled over. Gala's still in the fight and Isom is as well, but they are so split up now by the Ultimates who've just taken advantage of this more open part of the map to push through.
And it's a massive first pick off by Sile, who takes out Jaewoo, as Jaewoo we saw in the last map, right? Putting so much pressure on the back line of the Ultimates. This time Sile comes out on top, ends up getting a kill, and that's going to be first checkpoint for the Ultimates. I mean, very good start.
I mean, they really needed to get off to an absolute heater here, Matt. Getting that first point under their belt, solid. This is their map pick, and it's probably one of the best places you could see them. If you think about map pull over the course of this series, here's an Air Matrix being deployed pretty quickly from Gala. You can tell Virtus.pro want to assert themselves on this high ground and start to bleed some clock within this choke. And that Air Matrix is going to allow them to do exactly that. It forces a full recall from the Ultimates now, but they'll play behind 2 support Ultimates for this next engagement. Honestly, they're going to have a bit of everything. The losing Kai before he has a chance to deploy the bowler shot is going to be a little bit of an issue for their plan. Jaewoo looking for a backline with a pulse bomb ready to go. Has to outdo Ketzner, who's already gotten rid of the Brig. Force a recall as the Immortality field came down. Jaewoo doesn't have a good window here, and unfortunately, he's out of time.
It's a much better start here for the Ultimates. I thought it was going to be pretty rough, right? Sky ends up using his Amp Matrix, and then Kai ends up dropping right away. But they're still able to come out on top in the fight. Kevster with a big pulse bomb, and this is going to allow them to get high ground. So the Ultimates are starting to get rolling.
Now, of course, both teams trying to invest at least in controlling this higher point zone. This is a little bit further forward than you often see in attacking teams push, but based on where the card is, the Ultimates have to play on this causeway at the start of this engagement. Ah, yes, Parasol attempted to be thrown up there by Fixer as the downpour did come in. Kitsune rushed though from the Ultimates to really try and allow them to bowl over Virtus.pro, who make the right call in actually conceding that high ground and keeping Icenom up in that window of the courthouse so they at least have a foothold to fight for this high ground control. But they're running out of time, Matt. This card is already headed out into this last cul-de-sac.
I mean, it was a downpour from both sides. They're going to have to use this rally, and they don't, and they end up losing Shockwave. That's a large source of damage there. Jwoo ends up using the Pulse Bomb, but as the Immortality field there ends up keeping a player up, as now the rally comes through, as you are in desperation mode here for VP.
I mean, that's what the rally looked like, man. Absolute desperation. Fix it, just trying to stay alive, but in an awkward position, and not able to make use of that ultimate remotely aggressively. Virtus.pro, also they didn't have the ability to leverage that stun at all, as Kester was a long way from the scene. Here's an Matrix now coming up. This is awkward once more for Virtus.pro. They don't have a good place to fight or contest this card, and I don't want to know what happened to Shockwave, frankly. I just don't want to know. Then you backed off a cliff, hard to say. Pulse Bomb there thrown on Icenom's direction, but Fixer will go down, and even with that extra throughput, Gala cannot keep his team alive inside that Kitsune rush. There's another great pick from Sile, but the damage was already done by that point.
I mean, you lose your Freya right off the rip, right? I mean, that type of situation, no way you're fighting out of that. And I think it's really bothers Shockwave, right? You know, we saw Cassidy, now Freya, now over here on Soj. So yeah, a lot of changes here for Shockwave, trying to get a little bit more comfortable as you're also going to move away from Brig. So this is a comp that wants to play really fast now for VP.
And again, they can play up close. This is the same game plan, though, Matt. Start of the second point. Get up towards that choke. And they got a first pick on Kai in that situation. It just petered out after Kevster ripped him a new one, and he's done so yet again. This time, he's been able to find himself Gala. It has been Kevster leading the charge so far for the Ultimates on this map. And Virtus.pro have not had an opportunity to stand and fight with a full 5 players, really whatsoever.
It's wild, Mitch. They look like a completely different team, the Ultimates. And there's a part of me that's like, why didn't they just do this on Oasis, right? Like, you know, Yisung could have played the Hazard there. Maybe it's something you felt a little bit more comfortable with some other hero bands that come on through. But right now, I mean, they're in prime position. The DPS players especially coming alive for TU.
An unlikely pick off there. It's Jwoo falling to Kai, who of course has his pick of the litter when it comes to high ground positions. He's able to hop, skip, and jump out of that downpour as well. Sky Reaper, though, not quite as lucky. Immortality field doesn't keep him alive. Gala will be traded out. Heesung made a beeline for the back line, and now Isom has to turn tail and try and get topped up. Heesung wants to try and pressure this, but jagged balls are exchanged, and there's no way forward for the Hazard for the time being, but there it is. Kevster yet again. Icenom felled by a Pulse Bomb, and this is starting to look like a fantastic attack push on Dorado by the Ultimates. This is what we needed to see for the Ultimates to make their way into the top 3 in EMEA. Performances like this need to happen with regularity.
I mean, this is what people thought we would see when this team was put together, right? They look so good here on Dorado on offense. VP never got comfortable. Great use of the Hazard for Heesung and crew. When I think that like BAP Kiri definitely kind of it was an issue for VP to take advantage of.
I'm looking at the gap here between our Tracers. Kevster with 15 eliminations, 2 deaths. Jwoo, 3 eliminations, 4 deaths. Virtus.pro not able to put together remotely enough of these picks. Frankly, they are just getting out-traded in so many of these engagements. Kevster with a, you know, again, if you like match up Tracers, an extra 25% damage like this adds up so much over the course of this game. That is like, what, 3, 4 full kills of non-500 HP heroes. So considerable distance between the two. And Shockwave, as good as he's been, hasn't been able to help Virtus.pro keep up so far.
No, and you know, playing the Cassidy at the start, I thought it was a pretty nice look, right, with the Cassidy, with the Brig and the BAP, but the Ultimates just kind of slowly pushed them back, then took advantage with some nice pickoffs from Sile and Heesung. Now on offense, so what does VP decide to go with? Do they decide to play like a Winston-based setup here, or maybe they go back to the Hazard? You have Ice Gnome because this would be your Winston look.
I think that this comp can struggle against the Freya. I think the bowler shot is devastating for Winston in general. It's really hard to catch on to, you know, the newest addition to the damage roster. Kind of been the issue for the Ultimates, why they haven't felt like they've been able to roll out that signature comp with impunity so much anymore. However, you probably feel like you have a little bit more of that, just mobility. Right? Shorter cooldown in the jump pack, ability to maybe take that higher ground and be fairly non-committal about it, whereas Hazard has to get a bit more involved. Kaikev's already taken low, so the poke damage favoring VP here, but the ultimates can back up, concede some ground. And it's going to be up to Virtus.pro. They're the ones that need to decide how this next fight goes.
Yeah, the idea would be you see where Ice Gnome is here, just like completely avoid the hazard if possible, but Kevster's starting to heat up. I mean, he's been able to go in and take out Shockwave a few times now, regardless of the hero, and then you see Ice Gnome trying to make it back to the rest of the squad, barely able to stay up as Heesung was going in for maybe the kill, but a good start on defense for TU.
The first pick, of course, is where they want to be. Ice Gnome doesn't probably feel like he can really ever fight Heesung at length. You see what happens, he just loses out so heavily in that damage trade.
Yeah.
Less burst damage available to him, and obviously Ice Gnome is someone who really needs Jaywu to be by his side, but for the Tracer, it could take a little bit of time to get in position on this first part of the map. See, Jaywu has to obviously take the lift and maybe blink across rooftops or make his way through the back stairs, so it can take some time to set this up.
Right, yeah, and it's like this Winston, if it doesn't like result in a combination with Jaywu getting some of these players in the back line, like you're just going to see the position that Ice Gnome was in there, just hightailing it out, right? Like losing HP at a fast rate. So Ant Matrix here up on the high ground, not going to result in any kills, just going to buy some more time.
And this, I mean, sorry, Kai is just out of there. There's no way that Winston could really catch Freya. He's absolutely pieced. No chance to catch onto the Freya, who now has a bowler shot, so should push come to shove and Ice Gnome actually get to grips with the Freya, he's obviously going to be locked in and slowed down for that period of time. So very, very difficult here for Virtus.pro with what they have to work with right now. Still not quite a sound barrier developed for Fixer. And Shockwave is starting to run low. Yep, that was Kevster and Ice Gnome combining there to pick him up. And Jaywu just, unfortunately, doesn't have enough time to do what he needs to.
And it's, I mean, Kevster and Heesung getting here through the choke, and Kevster is just running rampant through the lineup of VP. People in the chat after game one are like, oh, Kevster will play on a good team again eventually, right? It's like, well, this team is a good team. They just need to kind of get some of these comps down and get in matchups like this, and you see the difference where right now they're looking to potentially get a full hold against VP, a minute on the clock. Sound barrier will be the big thing here for Virtus.pro. Like, if you don't get a great use of this, you are in a world of trouble.
You also need to force an early immortality field here, Matt. You might have to use the sound barrier in order to get close enough to do so. Ah, nice lead up by Fixer. Sky can't benefit from his immortality field whatsoever as Fixer boops him out of the radius. He's able to pick him up. Great start here for Virtus.pro, and now they can lean into some of these DPS ultimates a little bit heavier. Ice Gnome also with a Primal Rage can stall these fights out a little bit longer. Kai, under pressure, is actually able to trade out, deal with Fixer. That might matter a little bit later on as these reinforcements start to come in, but with Heesung falling a little bit later in the fight and only Kevster up to stall, this might be a problem. He, though, is in range of Sky, I think, or at least Sile, who's able to top him up, and there is a crack at this for ultimates. It'll be tough to stall this one out and see how much they want to commit.
Yeah, but for the ultimates, right, even though the sound barrier gets used there by Fix on the VP side, they didn't really give up a ton of progress there through the choke, and it is Kevster getting a touch, but nobody else able to make it back. So that will be first checkpoint there for VP, but I mean, a great first point defense from the ultimates. I mean, VP not working with a lot of time here.
Now, again, the issue is going to be for Virtus.pro. Ice Gnome cannot take this high ground on his own. Will need to be some level of coordination for VP, and also getting Shockwave a decent sight line, which there are very few right now. Shockwave has to play reactively and hope that the ultimates come to him, bring the fight to that low ground, but they're not really incentivized to do so long as they can cycle Heesung onto the cart and stall it out, and outplay off this air matrix. Instantly, Suzu drawn out there. That little invulnerability frame allows the ultimates to get or rather, VP to get out of the way in time. And Ice Gnome now finds that primarily developed in the previous fight. He can use that to deny his high ground now on his own. And looking to dive into the backline after Jaywu has done his job. Damage dealt. Kai out of the game. And VP really starting to snap at the heels of the ultimates, but this has to be a very quick second point.
Yeah, and maybe if you're VP, right, you're just like gonna lose Shockwave off the rip in some of these, and you just need to play a little bit more aggressive and let Ice Gnome and Jaywu turn the death of Shockwave potentially into 2 kills on the other side, right? As Jaywu gets quite low there. It's forced to use recall already, but you see Jaywu and Ice Gnome trying to just take perches near this door and try and make it costly for players to exit.
Some great early picks here. Kai's able to find Shockwave. Much debate about the Frey versus Sojourn issue. It's always been more comfortable to see Shockwave on the Sojourn, but the Ultimates having to put a stop to them here, and that might be a bit of a death blow. Coming into this next fight, Virtus.pro do, of course, have some of these DPS Ultimates, but not great positioning to take as attackers. And the Ultimates are blessed. They are chilling. A heck of a lot to work with now, and including a Kitsune rush that could be critical.
I mean, Kevster is cooking right now. I mean, it feels like every single fight, Shockwave is like first dead at the hands of Heesung or Kevster. There's just no way for him to avoid these players. As see, Izone gets hit with an explosive shot here, and look at this. The Ultimates, they put that Kitsune rush down on the high ground. They want to get aggressive here, and they lose Sile.
I mean, Sile, with more damage than Jwoo right now, has been a big part of the Ultimates game plan. He's been throwing those knives like crazy. Kai's able to find a bowl shot on the cart, though, when Icenom could not get away from it. That allows Sky to pick him off, and this is a little bit of momentum loss for Virtus.pro, but they've got to commit. This is it. Heesung with a nice downpour that catches Fixer, and of course it's easy enough for Heesung to turn around to help Sky with finishing that elimination. And now, Virtus.pro caught off the card. Heesung, Spike Guard, able to give him the damage reduction to avoid being taken down by the Pulse Bomb, and it's the Ultimates able to emerge from a bit of a dogfight here in Dorado with ultimately convincing map win.
They could have very well have gotten a first point hold. They end up getting it right before second. But I mean, if Kevster and Heesung can play like that, this is going to be a very long series. I know Kevster looked great there on Tracer all throughout, and Heesung phenomenal playing Hazard, which like it kind of makes me wonder why we didn't see them play Hazard in map 1, right, and just take like the mirror, because it looks like they very easily could have won that. So huge bounce back here for the Ultimates. Excited to see where this series goes.
And I think this is kind of what the Ultimates have been working on throughout the entirety of this stage too, is finding that sort of bridging composition that doesn't leave them really susceptible to getting hero banned out, right? Over a longer series, that becomes less of an issue. If the Ultimates can make this like a 5 mapper, for example, they can sort of play their style. But you've got to admit, this map, a bit of a silver bullet for them, right? They're always going to want to go to maps like Dorado. We don't, of course, see Vistola subbed in. It's going to be still Icenom, for the first 2 maps. I still have the question of how do they play against the more flex tank style, right? The more ground-born, brawly look that Virtus.pro have also been able to make use of. Because for me, the Hazard matchup, it's a gold star for the Ultimates. But do they have enough in the tank to sort of win an entire series against a team like VP?
And the thing, Mitch, that's quite interesting, right, is we're seeing Sile in today. A lot of teams would target and build a ban strategy for the Ultimates that's really kind of like support heavy, right? You force them onto like, you force Twilight on the Brig, you force Twilight on the Lucio, like you take away Akiri, right? And that kind of like makes things all odd, right? So with Sile in, it kind of throws a little bit of that out the window, right? Where like, maybe VP had a strategy and like, this is how we're going to attack this with bans and different maps and support line. And then now that's completely out the window.
Well, it's also not really clear, I think, after Sile having spent so much time as a sub on this team, what the target hero pool is if you're looking after a player like that. And all of a sudden, he's able to turn up on the Kiriko and become a legitimate damage threat. Like I mentioned at one point, he was out damaging Jwoo for most of Dorado, if not the entire map, and that speaks volumes. Kevster also, like we mentioned, with a pretty dominant showing in general. I think this begs the question. There's got to be sub here, I think, for Virtus.pro, and so this makes me. This is the real challenge, I think, for the Ultimates. We've seen them warm up. These teams have re-established familiarity with one another, but can the Ultimates deal with this more classic EMEA style of, bringing that flex tank in, like the Ramatras, for example, who, by the way, has been buffed slightly with the healing from his Vortex perk, or looks like that. They have to be able to tangle in this kind of metagame too.
Okay. So with the map pick of Midtown, we see VP sometimes go to the Ramatra here, or like even Sigma, right? Play kind of like around those corners by the choke. So I expect to see them kind of go for that here. The bans are quite interesting. So for VP, they actually get rid of the Kiri, and for the Ultimates, they actually get rid of the Orisa. So you're going to try and force them to play maybe like Hazard or something different into a Ramatra.
And I think also this means that I think VP are trying to force Lucio here, maybe for Sile. I think that has to be like the look for the Ultimates. In theory, that's why we speculated that he would be coming on in here, to this particular series, is that, you need a Lucio player between Sky and Twilight, and there wasn't obviously a clear and obvious fit there. The Ultimates definitely built their team looking, with the exception of Sile, of course. Look, it's slightly one-dimensional. Now I've had to show that flexibility that many teams have also been challenged by over the course of this season. That's why Virtus.pro have added Ice Snom to their team to give Vistola someone else to play off of. But also, Vistola, again, as he did with Chase, is having to split his playtime. That definitely affects performance. That's something that we've speculated about with these teams that do have a secondary tank player, right? If they don't have one tank that can show the flexibility they need, they have to split playtime. And Vistola, with only a 60% scrim load, I would assume, just based on how often we see him in games, is going to have to get in here and hit the ground running very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, this is an odd situation, right? Where you have a player who we haven't really seen a ton of, come in here for the ultimates, and Siles actually played really well. Like you talked about, like some of the damage numbers on the Kiri, and it completely changes the series. And it's wild to the point that obviously you have a new patch, things happen, but as much as we talk about the regular season and stage and whatnot, really it just kind of comes down, the entire thing comes down to this one game for these two teams, right? I don't know if either of them had the goal or the ability to take on a Alcatia or a TM, right? So you're essentially just playing for that qualification spot the entire time, and you get there, and now being able to kind of bring in a player like Sile to play a Kiri changes it up, and now it's gone.
Let's not forget that when EMEA turned up in Hangzhou, their biggest weakness was that they were so attached to these comps, these styles, the Divas, the Ramatras, the Sigmas. They would not play Dive. They didn't really dabble too much in the Malga, and they got blown out of that tournament unceremoniously. Right now, if you want to do the eye test, it feels like Europe are definitely looking much improved, especially with a couple of these teams, VP and the Ultimates, especially building in a little bit more diversity to some of their offerings, whether it's through subs or just their tank players being able to be extra flexible. But I'm looking at Sile here on the brig. The Ultimates going to a Ramatra comp, which for me has not been one of their natural looks, right? I'm not convinced that this team has transformed this series yet. If it's just on their map picks that they look good, Matt, that's not going to be enough because they lost control.
No, and this will be a much different look for TU, right? With Heesung playing the Ram and Jaewoo going to be playing the Sim. So we actually saw them try a little bit of this, Mitch, and it didn't look great. And I think it's also, you're taking Jaewoo off of a hero like Tracer, where he's so impactful in putting on Sim, which obviously you can still be impactful. Just not maybe to the same result a lot of the time.
I mean, you could say the same. Virtus.pro did dabble, Ultimates rather, did dabble with the Sim for Kepster for a little bit, and they were like, this is ridiculously bad. we cannot take Kepster off the Tracer. I do think the Sim combat is really coordination and communication heavy. Yeah, and I think the teams that have stuck together for longer and have that more drilled down, look at my God, look at Twisted Minds, right, with the Sim comp. They're just unbelievably good. However, the Ultimates haven't been able to handle it too well so far. Again, that sort of front-loader damage in the front line has been a big issue for someone like Heesung to try and stick around. Shockwave there, catching on the Sile, no escape for him. Gala's immortality field already dealt with as he's here on the map. Now Heesung gone means Virtus.pro have this point for sure.
And this is right out of Alcatia's playbook and Twisted Minds, right? Playing the Diva with the Sim, kind of moving the Diva all around, and it becoming very difficult to deal with. So for TU, they'll actually have Sky going over here to the BAP, so that'll be the main change. I'm curious why they consistently play so much of the Freya, where we've seen a lot of teams kind of go away from it. Right here up on this high ground, this is a perfect range for a Soj or even Cassidy.
I mean, playing the Freya against the Diva can always be a little frustrating. How much ground are the Ultimates going to have to give up here? If Deadeye for Shockwave gives them a staging ground, you'll notice that he even has been able to sort of work his way around on that right side to get Vistola underneath, which means he's not going to take that poke damage unless the Ultimates want to commit, so they're going to go for a bowl shot there. Thrown in by Kai. Soundberry here for Virtus.pro. They know they want to keep going here, and their immortality field buys them enough time to deal with Heesung. Oh, it's a disaster for the defenders. Sky's out of the picture already, and Fixer is hunting in that backline. Virtus.pro put it together yet again as the Deadeye from Shockwave gives them pole position.
I mean, poor Heesung, right? They kind of get this flip, right, where they give up some of the high ground, drop down to play on the card. He's got the Annihilation to work with, and they drop down with a sound barrier and an Ant Matrix and just kind of like gun him down. I mean, nothing he could do in that situation. Kai switches over to the Sojourn. I like this a little bit better a lot of pressure here on the Gala from Kev, but Gala able to drop that immortality field, keep himself up.
Bit more here for Jago, though. Look at this placement. It is so good to allow Virtus.pro to dance this. They're going to get out of line of sight at the very least. Then there's a rally in play here for Sile. So Virtus.pro want to probably take a beat on this. Not get too aggressive. That is too far from Sile, though. He is so far ahead of the Ultimates. Just gets ahead of himself, maybe thinking that post-rally, the Ultimates were favored in that fight. That could come back to hurt them, but Pistola is down. He dies in a side fight. And now the amplification matrix, rather, from Sky will give them at least that extra output just to roll over VP that look dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, although you do lose Sile, still it kind of like splits up some of VP in the position that he kind of gets to. So we'll see. I think he's actually going back to the spawn here. Going to go back probably over to the brig. We'll see if that's the case. Yep, yeah, going to go back, swap over to the brig. So back over to this comp yet. Ooh, an Illari pick. So these are things that like we typically would not see from them. When Twilight in, right? Playing the Illari here, like Bap Illari is like pretty good for first point, right? We see it quite often.
And a pretty good anti-Cassidy measure as well. There you have even more things that sort of outrange Shockwave and make life a little bit hard for him. Shockwave now has to be sort of pretty careful of where he plays. You see the railgun whistle over his head there. You know, he's going to be under some deal of pressure. He's sung with an annihilation. It feels like it was a bit more aggressive maybe to force Virtus.pro back, but they're going to come in yet again. Fix him with a sound barrier. Surely this is the time for Virtus.pro. And with Sile being a little bit immobile, a little bit fragile, is going to be the first casualty, first on the menu. And Virtus.pro will eventually bully their way through behind the sound barrier to fix it.
And there's nothing that the Ultimates can really do there, right? They don't have a huge support ult to kind of counter that. They don't have an annihilation, and it just kind of like tick constantly on some of that damage. Once they use their aim metrics, get the annihilation out from Heesung, then they can just kind of re-enter with their sound barrier and not be afraid of anything returning on the other side.
Kindness wants to get early access to this angle. You can see it can be a bit of a nuisance here now with that healing pylon thrown down by Sile. And an overclock at the ready, so he can definitely assert himself in that side angle. Pistola wants to play up pretty close on the left there and not be subject to these shots in from Kai, but Shockwave does not have that option. Outrange, outgunned, outdamaged. The Cassidy's off the table already for Virtus.pro, and they're in a bit of a compromising spot, tucked in on the left side. Need to find a way to extract themselves, otherwise this stacker gets a little bit nastier.
And not able to be saved there from the pulse bomb that comes in from Jaywu. So you're not going to be able to keep this solo up. I thought, like, okay, if you keep this solo up, could you kind of, like, heal a little bit and kind of get around that corner with a speed boost and annihilation, take advantage of that window, but most certainly not going to do so. Now, Kevster finds Gallus and everybody hightailing it here for VP.
I like the idea of, like, if you're the Ultimates and you see Kai get pulse bombed, Kevster is already pressuring Pistola, who was low after that first fight. He just sticks around and says, if we get the Ramatra here, they cannot do anything with that pick on the Sojourn. So ultimately, the pulse bomb for Jangu doesn't mean anything. They're negated, of course, by trading out the tank. Here comes VP yet again, an annihilation to work with, of course, and Shockwave, once again, can use this Deadeye at least to get him into slightly better positioning. And Matrix, though, from the Ultimates, means that Virtus.pro have to wait a beat yet again. This is a devastating firing squad waiting for them.
I mean, Kenny, right? I mean, you're going to come around the corner here if you're Shockwave or Habit. Like, you're rolling into a Sojourn who's obviously got, you know, some shots, and then there's going to be the Captive Sun, and Shockwave gets hit by it.
The Deadeye there was trying to, I think, dissuade Sile from pushing up, and it worked for a time, but Shockwave is still affected by the debuff and eventually brought down by the detonation of the Sun. Pistola here, nowhere to go, annihilation expiring. Heesung gets the better of him once more, and this is big for the Ultimates. This is like, I guess, the tone that we're looking for from this team. If they can play Ramatra comp and they can go toe-to-toe with VP here, it could mean that they're making it, of course, to our mid-season tournament.
If you erase map 1 from your memory, I mean, the Ultimates have been pretty dominant throughout the rest of the series, right? No, at least thus far, looking like potentially, no, not going to allow VP to complete the map, but VP will end up, okay, Ant Matrix here up on that high ground. They're going to have a sound barrier here to drop below.
Oh, Shockwave just a little too low. Kevster able to bring him down. The Ultimates here with good numbers. Gala realizes there's no path forward. Pistola knocking heads together in the back line, but now DC not bothered to be staggered. Yeah, I mean, look, he was very deep. I thought he was done. I'm surprised he even got out with a kill, but it's been much with the fight reset here, Matt.
Well, I mean, you didn't gain much of like even like payload progress, right? You see like kind of you use some of those key ultimates, you push all the way in where Vestola was, and you basically just get it like a little bit past the archway, right? But now when this next fight kicks off, it's going to be just push right on back, and Kepster has been so huge going on these flanks. If he can find an early pick off here, that would be insane.
The Ultimate's trying to group up here, stick together. They got an Ant Matrix just around a corner. Kyle wants to open up now. Look at the pressure coming his way, though. Sound barrier. He's trying to hide inside the mortality field, but there's no escape. At least he's stung in the meantime. Extracts his pound of flesh. It's Gala down, but he was left behind, of course. Oh, no! Oh, no.
It's one of those. It's one of those.
It's the loss of the BAP. All four remaining players from VP have to go forward and chase Kai down, because with that overclock in play, Kai is such a problem. But it was very, very clever. I think Hisung was on the cart, realizing if he just kills the BAP, VP are too far away.
Yeah, let's see this. So it's actually Kepster and Hisung on that flank yet again. And you see his players start to come back. Jaewoo. Jaewoo tried to get the touch and then like use that recall, and then it probably would have been Fixa, who's the next on it. And
they're so far away, Matt.
Not able to,
They are.
They're so deep.
They are spending. We saw Kai died. He slid back into an immortality field, still died. That's what 4 Virtus.pro players beating his brains out can do. But they've let their BAP, of course. The BAP is going to stay on the card. He doesn't have the mobility to follow up anyway. But he just gets 2v1'd. Very nicely done by the Ultimates. They realize there's an opportunity to really punish VP for that aggressive play.
And we saw this match not too long ago, right? Previous patch, but back in week 6, it was like June 15th. Yeah, June 15th we saw this, and it was a 3-0. It was a pretty clean sweep in favor of VP, so and the Ultimates have turned up to another level today.
This is a big result for the Ultimates so far. Let's see if they can convert. Let's listen in now, see what the game plan is at the start of their attack side.
Okay.
Okay. Six.
Okay.
Next dash we can push main, okay?
Yeah. Push main?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, alright, I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. 2, 1.
6 arm rock. That's alright. Fire.
It's slow now. Slow. Bring in 5.
You go.
I can push it back. Yes,
Push ready. 3, 2, 1, go.
Only me, guys. Keep walking. Okay.
Push left.
First.
Oh, no way. I'm bad.
Yeah, there's Swapcom. You wanna change something?
Staggering here.
Yeah.
I have
take Tracer.
I go big.
Maybe. Oh, he's back on tap.
Yeah.
For the Ultimates. The Ultimates have been in the same position in Stage 1, in a lower bracket semi-final, having to win a game to qualify for Hangzhou, and they did. They were able to beat Twisted Minds out. They made this insane run back at the end of the stage after a shocking group stage again. This feels like a repeat of that, Matt, but they've got to figure out this VP hyper-defensive comp with the Torb in the mix.
Yeah, we'll see if they're able to do so, right? VP playing that double flex support. I know with the Torb, a lot of crossfire action here. Vestola able to just kind of maneuver around the map pretty fast as he's going to try and get back to the rest of the team quite low. I was going to say maybe there's a world in which you nano Kev, but he ends up falling at the hands of Jaewoo. So an early pickoff yet again is you have to be careful here if you're the Ultimates, like with how your offense is kind of going, right? You're going to be below a minute, like really quick.
And this might be the kind of comp where you would want to see the Ultimates play Lucio, man. That speed, well, you have a Genji, so you're full committing.
Or sleep.
Oh, nice bio to the back line there as well. Gala with a captive stun, though everybody's caught under the underpass. Shockwave's turret taken care of now that Annihilation is a problem for Virtus.pro. They've got to keep clear of Hisung. Skyler was taken down. Hisung won't have a ton to keep him topped up outside of Sile, and Shockwave is already defensively rolling out the red carpet, so to speak. Getting that Molten Core in play, and Sile got picked off. That lack of mobility on the Juno has been a bit of a hindrance now for the Ultimates, and again, there's another attack that fizzles.
Yeah, I mean, you have to just let everybody drop here for TU, so that is your Annihilation. This Kev Blade is taking a bit, Mitch, here to get online, right? You would think okay, if he can get this blade like Nano Blade, that is most certainly a fight-winning condition. It's just been tough to find any limbs and damage here for Kev working through the choke.
You know who else's name had 3 letters, Matt?
I do, but I our boy AKM.
Good guy. Blade here for Kevster, now going to try and make use of it. Waited up the immortality field and cuts Shockwave to ribbons. Kaida's been taken down. Kevster gets a ton of value off the long-awaited Dragon Blade. Gala and Shockwave both accounted for by the dynamic Swede. Fixer has to fall back behind this Amp Matrix now, but doesn't have a lot to heal. Bastola trying to get topped up, can get back into the fight and stall. Has a remake opportunity at that. Virtus.pro need to get their ducks in a row pretty quickly.
That's a lot to use, though, for TU. So VP, they'll have Bastola who can get a remake here as he'll work his way out onto the point. And you end up using your orbital ray there as well. You're just going to basically have this Kai overclock if you can get it.
Pretty good stall here for Bastola. He's done well to stay alive as long as he has, but I think just the pick on Sky is not going to be enough here for Virtus.pro. An admirable attempt here on defense, but Jaewu still looks to be a threat. Bastola eventually desuited and taken out of the game. And there's no chance here for Jaewu to chase after the low health Kai or Kempster. And the ultimates fight very hard for this first point. But his Ramatra composition says Lucio will be on the road.
Yeah, we'll see how it'll work here through this second part of the map. So you'd like to see them play the Lucio here. And I think the Juno obviously doesn't have the speed capabilities in the same fashion as the Lucio. But I do think the orbital ray, like the Ramatra inside of the orbital ray, is like filthy, though. I mean, it makes it very difficult to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Basola's happy to have the mobility on Diva. That means he doesn't have to stay within that vicinity for too long. He can back out. There's always an eject button should it be required. You know, Hisang wants to establish some stairs control now. That's the only way the ultimates have to take control of this high ground. Virtus.pro have to know this. They're going to allow it because Hisang will beat Bastola in a straight up fight in the front line. Captain Sun on a Kai. Good damage, and that's enough to get the detonation. Nicely done by Gala. Sorry, a little bit of fade up, follow up shot. And that will decimate the ultimates. The sheer weight of ult advantage here for VP.
And just flying right over the top of that high ground, the Captive Sun, that's a big one there for Gala. Bastola does lose mech, though, so can you get this mech back here for the start of the next fight? That would be huge, as Bastola just kind of like poking around the corner there, seeing if he can get close to a new mech. He will have a Nano Blade, potentially, coming up here, too.
Guy obviously wants to tuck on this quarter now. Decent sideline. Bio, no connection now. Jay caught on a Fixer by the looks of things, but no chance to get towards the map in the back line. Kempster definitely was searching. But Fixer's been able to get cleansed of that anti-heal, and he's back in the fight for real now. And that Nano, Kempster didn't have an opportunity to combine it with the blade, so he gets a little bit weaker now. And the bowler shot from Shockwave thrown in. Is there follow-up? Sile very, very low. Oh. This Karthos still pushing here. Someone has to answer Kempster. He'll be forced back. Kai with an overclock now keeps VP's head straight on down. And Fixer couldn't make use of the immortality field for long enough. Kai picked it off there with a rail. But Sile and Kai are both missing, and now Hisang getting a little bit light on that healing architecture to keep him in the game. Kempster hoped to dash for the health pack, but he was chased by Shockwave. Once again, VP's defense looking too staunch for the ultimates.
And it's definitely looked a little bit worse for the ultimates here without the Kiri, right? The Juno, an easy target for the back line as he's trying to make his way here back down to the payload, sending into OT.
And not much to be done here, I'm afraid. Shockwave falling, but Hisang's out of the game crucially. This is the orbital ray. And Virtus.pro
here.
Step back off this. As long as Bastola just has to fully commit, that's a pulse stone on towards Sky, and of course no BAP available for the ultimates. No way to stop that from being devastating. That's half the reason Kempster got off the tracer. But Virtus.pro eventually slow ultimates down to a screeching halt. And this is kind of what we raised, I think, at the start of Midtown, right? Virtus.pro want to try and take him out where they can play that sort of flex tank style, get Bastola where he belongs. And as good as the ultimates looked, and they really did on that defense side, unfortunately their attack side just lacked the fire, just lacked the kill threat that they needed to keep up with that time bank.
Yeah, and I think that double flex support backline there for VP was great. And then also the Juno on the other side. I like the Juno with the orbital ray, but with the way that they were just attacking Sile, they're just not able to keep the Juno up. Like Juno on a very weak backline trying to defend themselves.
I think now we're getting to the point where, you know, VP's map picks are like becoming a little bit strained. Obviously with like Hybrid being turned into a must brawl map, that's like Silver Bullet potentially taken away from Virtus.pro. They started with Shockwave on the Cassidy here, right? And we did eventually see Virtus.pro make good progress in towards the end of the map. It's a regrettable but forgettable Charlie Nida at the end there, given how much better their defense side was. But we're starting to see things work. Like Kevster on the Tracer was always going to be a part of the win condition for this team, but Hisung on the Ramatra looked quite good, and all of a sudden we're starting to wonder, have the Ultimates solved their woes of not being able to have a good brawl comp to their name? Unfortunately, the Junos seemed a bit exploitable, though, and Jaywoo was able to have a pretty solid game in punishing that. Gala on the Iliari is always going to be a threat. It's always, fun to see him go over towards that pick. He's been doing that for a long time now. Virtus.pro come up with the answers here. Bit of a dogfight, drawn out, but the defense side from VP really solid.
Yeah, but you don't have like another one of those like Kiri type bans, right? For VP, they've already gotten rid of the Ana, they've gotten rid of Kiri as well. So it's like, you're gonna have to go to a map that the Ultimates is probably pretty comfortable playing as well, right? Whether it be like a Suravasa or Runasapi. Those are like basically been the two that we see for EMEA in the the Flashpoint and the push pool. So you'll probably see them go to one of those two where the Ultimates is pretty comfortable, and then they can't go for one of those supports.
Look, I think neither. I think the Ultimates looked obviously very, very good on Dorado when they got that sort of hazard mirror. If we head up to something like Runasapi, for example, it locks us a little bit more into that brawl style, which VP just looked to be a cut above on. Bear in mind, they're making use of like a less durable frontliner in the Diva who can't hang around too long against Ramatra. So I'm very curious to see what these hero bands look like. We're going to find out on the other side of this break. This is Virtus.pro versus the Ultimates for a spot in our mid-season championship. It's all on the line, and VP are one map away, so don't go anywhere. And here we are. The only thing standing in between Virtus.pro and a spot at the mid-season championship is the Ultimates. And they've got their map pick heading into Suravasa. The Ultimates showed us a pretty darn good showing on Dorado with that hazard composition. And this is the kind of map where you feel like they're pretty well suited to. As a team that doesn't play Lucio, no shock to see him get banned away. Very common on these Flashpoint maps. Whereas VP have opted to remove the Ramatra.
I like the Lucio ban here. The Ramatra ban is quite interesting because that's one we saw both teams kind of go towards there, right? But maybe VP feels like they could do something with Vestola that's a little bit different, whether it be Orisa. Oh, they can bring out the Sigma here, right? No Lucio with those double flex supports. You could bring out the Sigma potentially, or Diva in the mix, right? So a few different options for VP to go with. That comp that they were kind of hovering, right, with that, Cassidy, Sigma, it would be very difficult to play like a Winston into that if that's what the Ultimates is thinking.
Challenging, very positional game it's going to be between these two. Virtus.pro had Ramatra ban against them in map 1 because the Ultimates wanted to play Orisa, but it's a very different story now. It is going to be the Winston Ana composition for the Ultimates, and conspicuously, Twilight is still nowhere to be seen. It's Sky and Sile backline for the Ultimates as they fight for survival in this series.
And Sile has been really good on the Kiri, and now it's going to be available throughout the rest of the series. So Sky also has a little bit more flexibility than Twilight. I think that's why you see these decisions being made here by the Ultimates. I would say as well, if you're just kind of judging it, it has paid off, right? This has been much better than they've looked over the last, few weeks in general, right? I mean, this was a 3-0 the last time we saw it. This is a very close series right now.
And it would be so like the Ultimates to push for a map 5 and take the series here. They always make that late stage run back as the coaching finally starts to take hold. Virtus.pro start with control of the point, though. They're in the Bap Iliari composition, so very poke-oriented. Hisung will struggle to have more than half health before he makes this dive in, which is a scary prospect against the Sigma comp at the best of times.
I mean, how does he make the dive in, right? I mean, you see he's kind of on the low ground circling. I think he wants to ultimately even kind of save his leap to be able to get out as the immortality field used here, right? But it's just going to be silent. It's going to be able to keep Hisung up, right? He ends up using the TP, goes right to him, but you lose Kev. This has been quite brutal here for the Ultimates to play into.
I mean, Hisung has to successfully get through the immortality field first and then try and dive to Baptiste. Not easy at all. There are so many checkboxes that have to be filled by the Ultimates in order to satisfy their win condition. Whereas all VP have to do is stay alive, and their composition is, feels like it's purpose-built to do just that. They've got great high ground control, good vertical mobility. Hisung now going to try and set up on the rafters here, maybe drop down. The amplification matrix thrown up, and there's the immortality field. That's the answer to the pulse bomb. But Vistola was separated from the rest of his team in trying to keep the point alive, and that's an opportunity the Ultimates have been able to exploit.
Yes, they use a Kitsune Rush over the point, and they're able to flip it here when we get to 99. Curious about VP, so they feel like maybe on a little bit of like a re-entry, right? It could be a little bit harder to get that Sigma in position, right? With that shield, it's a little bit easier in the neutral game, and they decide to make some changes. So Fixa will play the Kiri, most likely just staying on the Alari because you have the Captive Sun, then probably a swap.
Sol here. Knows he's favored in the front line fight against Heesung, but the nano boost on the Winston. Heesung can do what he likes in the back line. Sile cleanses off the Captive Sun. Gala needed one more shot there to clean off the Kiri. And now have to back away. Outburst used and a great little pincer there by Virtus.pro. Gala working his way into the back line. Normally, you see the Judo Kiri comps go for the side fight style. But Gala's the kind of player who will try and take matters into his own hands. Now, VP still need to, flip this point back, but with Heesung on a different Flashpoint entirely right now, that's a given.
Yeah, we'll see. No, I don't think anybody gonna get here to contest for the Ultimates. Heesung was trying his hardest, right? I mean, he was using that primal Kev, not able to get the touch, has to use the recall. So they definitely thought about actually fighting that. You see a lot of the players here from the Ultimates right around this corner, and they want to commit to this. So they end up losing Sky, and now they're gonna try and fight.
Not what the Ultimates want to work with. This doesn't favor them coming to this next Flashpoint. Fixer, though, will be handled. Heesung able to dive away with a very small amount of health. And these two teams are juggling fighting and taking a Flashpoint that spawned actually in a favorable location for Virtus.pro. Closer to their spawn. Kevster caught out by Shockwave now. Move over to the Cassidy, looking a lot more threatening for the Tracer.
Yes, we'll see. Jaywu gets back towards Vistola and crew. Vistola using that defense matrix, just trying to protect everybody as they make their way towards the point. As the Ultimates will have that bullet shot. You see how much damage though Heesung just takes, even just getting into that window. I mean, loses like half his HP. Has to back out all the way.
All right, Captive Sun active once again for Gala. Has to deal with Siles, Suzu cleanse potentially. There's never a given that he can get value off of it. Vistola going to be demech though. Heesung dances that bubble very effectively and is able to avoid the self-destruct. Vistola never got back into mech either. That's a fantastic headshot for Sile to prevent the Diva from continuing to be a factor in this fight. Now VP, but Vistola still back off respawn. Have to dip a toe in. They've already got that first capture though, so this stall is favoring them heavily, and the Ultimates are so all in. They've got to regroup to go for this die, which is costing more and more time. Hindrance Grenade gets caught onto Kevster, but Shockwave is down. The Cassidy's lack of mobility proves to be his downfall. Vistola's got no business being on the point right now, but this is still a cushy little 70+% for Virtus.pro.
I mean, this stall is filthy. And now you lose Heesung. He doesn't actually use the primal. So is this like even remotely like, can you win this if you're VP? Gala ends up getting 2, but it looks like you just have Jaywu here. Okay, he doesn't get it to 99, but still an incredible stall there from Virtus.pro.
The problem for the Ultimates is their first dive doesn't work out, Matt. They really need to be on the same page, so they have to pull off,
huge,
regroup, and go in again.
You get Shockwave, right? So Shockwave and co are just kind of like playing around that corner, poking a little bit, waiting for some of these other players to get back into the fight, and you end up having Sile take out Shockwave at range. So that allows you to breathe a little bit if you are the Ultimates. And I guess for VP Mitch, Fix ends up using his Kitsune Rush in that play, right? So you kind of just throw that in there, and you get the stall, but not exactly a winning effort.
Wow, the dead eye on a Tracer!
What?
You don't see that every day. Shockwave there, also nice little fan to hammer mid-air, dealing with Heesung. He's very, very low inside Primal. Does not bode well at all for the Ultimates. Jaywu, yep, there to finish the job. Shockwave chased down his Simeon mark, and is able to take Heesung off the map. The Ultimates now in deep trouble on this Suravasa map and in this series in general. They have lost the first 2 Flashpoints, and they are hanging on by a thread.
Kev had to be extremely low, right? To be able to get taken out by that Deadeye that came out from Shockwave. And that obviously, Kevster's been really good throughout this series. That obviously changes some things going into that fight, where this is a must-win first fight on this Flashpoint here for the Ultimates. It feels like if you lose this fight here, VP's going to run this one up to 99.
Great Suzu there as well, gets the bio off. Shockwave allows them to roll back and maintain decent position, but no one's going to be ready for Kaya coming in from the backside. Bowler shot accounts for Gala, but in the meantime, Heesung flattened as he tried to dive. Yet again, the same problems come back to haunt the Ultimates, and this time, they may not be making the miracle run in the lower bracket to qualify for the tournament. The Mid-Season Championship is Virtus.pro's to lose at this point.
Yeah, let's see if VP can just hold off here, right? You're going to have this orbital array to use. You're probably just looking at this nano boost that Sky has available for Heesung. So we'll see if he's able to connect with this nano here and make a big play for the back line. There's going to be the nano. Let's see what Heesung does with it.
Pushes in and then another Suzu comes at a timely moment for Fixer, and here comes the orbital ray as they push in. Yes, Vistola affected by a Bionade, but he's got a rematch, so he just jumps back in. The Ultimates can't fight this. They know it. Orbital ray expires. The Ultimates now need to regroup as their comp often requires. Shockwave goes for a predictive hindrance grenade, but doesn't connect. The Tracer nowhere to be seen. Say the same for Heesung, though, as once again, he does not extract himself with his life. The Ultimates cannot keep the tank player alive. It's been the story of this stage so far. Just the disjointedness between their dive, tip of the spear, and the rest of their backline has been very glaring. And now there's one more chance, if that, for the Ultimates, Matt, to play for the mid-season championship.
Yeah, it's going to be all on Heesung. Can he get here with that Primal Rage? He can. See if he can make an impact, though. Already just getting low. 80 HP. He's just going to explode.
Ala does go down. It's going to be Kitsune Rush here for Virtus.pro. Extra healing at their fingertips to keep Vistola in mech. Vasile down. That's got to be the death knell for the Ultimates. There's not much more to be said for this team right now. They will fall, suffering from the same issues that have plagued him all through stage 2. It's Virtus.pro take Suravasa and take their place amongst the best in EMEA in our mid-season championship.
Yeah, we saw VP obviously at Champions Clash. They are with Alcatia representing EMEA. We will see VP yet again representing EMEA. Although right now we'll see how things shake out. Not as that #1 dominant with seed we saw them last time, but this team has definitely evolved since then, adding Ice Gnome into the mix. I know maybe not as dominant through EMEA, but still a very tough opponent.
Yeah, I mean, this team has had to learn to become more flexible. They've done so by adding an extra tank player, which obviously means that Vistola's going to fight for that playtime a little bit more, but it allows them here to be a bit more agnostic to any potential meta changes over the course of stage 2, but also between now and that mid-season championship. And look, commiserations to the Ultimates, Matt. We thought there was a chance they'd make a run back, but I felt that the top 3 in EMEA has been pretty well defined over the course of this stage. I'm sure our desk have many words to add here, of course, as we eulogize for the Ultimates, but celebrate Virtus.pro who advance in this lower bracket. Let's head to our experts now and break it down.
Thank you so much. Yeah, TU though, looking like a different team. Minus Oasis. They did make this rematch very competitive. We did see the changes in their backline, right? We talked about Twilight being out of the mix. It is VP, of course, that ultimately is securing their invite to the mid-season championship. Not gonna lie, I can't scrap Oasis completely from my memory. Why didn't they just take the hazard mirror on Oasis? Why? I feel like this could have led us to a completely different outcome here potentially. But let's talk about the changes of TU first. Let's talk about the positives, Johnny, as you're our positive guy.
Am I? Well, I am Swedish, I suppose. So I probably should be positive. Yeah. I mean, well, Swedish people are nice, and so therefore.
Is that so? Okay.
I feel like for the most part, like the Ultimates, they needed a breath of fresh air after a pretty troublesome stage for them, and it's been a rough year for them overall. So I don't blame them at all putting in Sky for this final matchup if things didn't really work out with Twilight. It added a different dimension to their play. Of course, we saw them, they really look competitive when they brought out some of this double flex support compositions. Dorado looked great here and obviously won that map. Now, I do think it's noteworthy as well that most of the time when the Ultimates found success, it was first of all Dorado, where they banned the Diva, which I think is a game changer if you're going to play that double flex support lineup, and it never really looked like Virtus.pro were comfortable in that matchup. And the other time that the Ultimates looked great was when Fixa was on the Lucio or on the Brig, and Virtus.pro, they really didn't have a great time reaching the double flex support backline of the Ultimates. So I think the Ultimates, they look good when that happened, but otherwise the series really was all Virtus.pro, and I think they closed it out in very dominant fashion as well. So Virtus.pro, there's no doubt about it. They were the better team in this matchup, but some glimpses from the Ultimates anyway to end their stage 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is
and
unfortunately
with-
the end though, right? So the Ultimates, we won't see them for a while. Virtus.pro though, keep themselves alive and in the mix, and a lot of that obviously due to very, very explosive individual performances here, Rich.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, honestly, just as a whole, to make it fast, I mean, Jaewu was unbelievable when it came just across this entire series, and Vistola, like you mentioned on the Diva, when it wasn't banned, was just front line and center.
Right. We actually have a post-match interview, I do believe, with, I want to say Shockwave, but let's find out. It is Shockwave. Yeah, word in my ear is confirming. So let's bring Shockwave in. Congratulations on the dub. And of course, also congratulations at securing that third slot for the region to head into the mid-season championship. This was a rematch last time. You guys beat them very convincingly. This time around, though, they played it a little closer. What do you think made this match closer?
I think they just kind of found a style that works for them, you know? They're playing like double flex, and like everyone is like kind of on heroes that make sense for them. So I think they almost figured it out a little bit too late. So
almost.
Yeah.
Tough.
Well, you know, now that you've solidified this third spot moving forward, do you have at least a little bit of weight off your shoulder? I mean, again, there's still like more, of course, ahead of you, and then preparation going into, you know, that mid-season. What's the thought process for you and the squad now, at least that you've got that little bit of like, you know, the checklist, like, hey, you've solidified this part. Now looking forward, what is that actually going to mean for you and the team?
I mean, it's hard in EU because the practice is like kind of weird, because you have LKC and Twisted Minds kind of playing the sim, and we don't really like the sim too much. But then it's like you want to win the whole thing, but you also have to beat TU, and they don't play sim at all, you know. So it's like so much stuff you have to figure out, you know. But I think winning this game is probably the most important, because a lot of our practice is for winning everything and figuring out TM and LKC, right? So yeah, I think we'll see how our practice like will result versus TM and Alcatia. So
I actually brought that up in the pre-show as well, that obviously they play a bit of a different style, so you're going to have to prepare a lot against Symmetra, and you said it yourself, you know, you have prepared a lot for the Symmetra, the rest of this tournament, considering Twisted Minds, Alcatia, they play that. Was there ever, especially considering your loss last weekend to Twisted Minds in a pretty dominant fashion, did you ever have any doubts about your own compositions going into this final weekend? Like, we're not really loving the Cassidy as much, but obviously you came out and played the Cassidy. Like, what were the questions, the discussions within the team about what compositions, like, you would play, and did you have any doubts about the way you've been playing going into this final weekend?
I think midway through the weekend we kind of like solidified our comps, and we had like a general idea, at least versus versus TU. But man, I'll be honest, like I'm not gonna lie, like there's so many like comps and stuff being played, you know. And especially with Symmetra, like people don't understand how stressful it is to play versus Symmetra, you know, because of the long TP perk. Like the game it's honestly a different game. Like everything changes. So yeah, there's so much going on. So
yeah, and the meta already just recently shifted towards that increase of Symmetra picks, right? So there's not that much time to really figure that out heading into the playoffs. But you secured your slot for the mid-season championship, and tomorrow you guys have an opportunity to go even further here in the playoffs as well. Shockwave, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck in your matches tomorrow.
Thank you.